bananas, B-A-N-N-A-N-S, bananas. This is kind of a new stroke setup around curves. So let's take a quick look at it. So basically we have our curve and we have our curve shape. So we can see here they are both two-dimensional objects, okay? And the interesting thing that I've done here is I'm actually no longer using the extrude because there's a lot of rotation issues. So the way that I got around it was using depth. And then basically, if we take a look at the depth, I crush it down. So if this is set to 1, and then I scale this guy out here like this, we can see the stroke. So basically it says like that. So yeah, in order to always have this default back to 1 in regards to scaling, if you're going to animate the scale, which is more than possible with this setup, then basically you want to Shift S, Alt A, no, Control A, yeah, Control A, is apply all the transforms to the deltas, or apply the scale deltas, and you can see there it switches out to 1. So before, you can see it's flattened out 0.001, and then Control A, scale your deltas, and you can see here it flattens it out to 1. So the cool thing about that is now you get this really flat looking stroke, something that grease pencil really has a problem with. So that's the first part. The next part is, before I was telling people come into here, grab it, and then keyframe this using the Animal add-on, right? No longer is that the case. I was talking about some issues I was having with the child-parent constraint and following the parental behavior inside of Blender. And then Zebrin chimed in and he's like, oh, we don't use it, man. There's too many issues with it. So it kind of got me thinking and exploring, you know, how do you parent something? And the other thing is like with the previous setup, basically you had to use the child parent off constraint, which is not bad in some cases. It just gets a bit bung sometimes. So the new setup, so before we look at the constraints, we're still using the curve setup here. So if we turn this off and on, you can still see how that curve is deforming around this selected object. Okay, so if we take a look at the constraints, all we're using is the limit constraint on the location and the rotation constraint. Now this is kind of like new grounds for me because I always try to avoid limits like the plague. But in this instance, for cutout animation, for like say for TV or for feature, limits are kind of gonna save the day here. So basically what we're doing is we're setting our limits to almost 0 on our Y and Z. We're setting up the custom default space. We're not affecting the transform on this, and that's on the location, right? And we can see here, just as the modifier stack, we're selecting the curve to reference the filled-in shape, our 2D filled-in shape, right? So 2D filled-in shape. So everything's 2D. So everything's flat. So you don't have to worry about strokes flying off into the distance and becoming completely retarded. So constraints, right? So we're all in this 2D constraint. We're switching it from custom, and then we're selecting our two-dimensional shape, which is here. Yep. So here you can see it's basically a circle 0.03. Great naming convention, Adam. And then you can see here in the test, like we're just selecting that, so we can see it flies right off and it's all crazy. And now here it's on there and it tracks reasonably well. Okay, so that's super good. So what this enables us to do is this enables us to put the stroke just also gently above our two-dimensional plane, which is great for animation purposes, right? And then here on our rotation, we've got everything completely locked off, right? Like we want to lock everything off. And then again, we're going to set our custom space and to the shape that the curve modifier is referencing. So that means we can try to rotate the crap out of this, but we can't rotate it. Here's the interesting thing though, because most of the time you're going to be like grabbing or whatever, yeah, grabbing and rotating and scaling. When you need to slide your stroke into a new position, all you need to do is grab it and you can keyframe it at this level. So we can set a keyframe here and then we can set a keyframe here. And the thing is like, it's important to not worry about the origin in this setup. Otherwise, you know, you're going to be going backwards and forwards. You're going to be like, oh, my origin's always moving. But the thing is like, try not to worry about it with the stroke. If you suffer from something like ADHD, then maybe go learn some C++ or something, and then you can deal with your Python however the hell you want. But in this instance, yeah, not setting the minimum and maximum checkboxes actually enables us to keyframe it. So in this instance, we can actually, yeah, we can rotate our stroke into the position, into the desired position that we need to on the shape when you're animating your character. So this setup seems to actually work pretty well. Now, the thing that you'll notice that isn't in here, so this is the two-dimensional shape with that's a fill, so our fill to two-dimensional shape. And you'll notice I have it's affecting the transforms and it's actually set on a local space. We're going to explain that in just a minute, so we'll come back to that. Okay, so we have our stroke here. It's sitting above our two-dimensional curve filled shape. And we can move it around. Now this is just using our normal, if we, yeah, this is just using our normal parent behavior. And basically I've just used the object keep transformation constraints. So far in the testing, I haven't had any issues, which is super awesome. However, there is an interesting thing here. And this could actually be kind of really cool. Like, is there actually a displace modifier in here? Can you displace modifier on a curve? No, you can't. That kind of sucks. But anyway, because you could actually potentially set up a line boiling effect if it wasn't parented, right? So here's the thing. That's our fill. This is our stroke. Crazy bananas. If we go into our object and we take a look at our relationships, we can see here it's using some kind of object parenting, right? So whether we've told it to bananas, whether we've told it to use one of these kind of parenting behaviors, you can't actually see that in the relationship. So it is something that I got in contact with the developers about, and maybe something will be introduced. But if we go and we clear, and we come here and we clear our parent. Yeah, we'd like to clear it today. Come on, Dad. Clear parent and keep transformations. This is kind of cool. And totally unintentional discovery, but as you move it, the stroke actually rotates around the object. So the cool thing is when you set your limits to custom, basically what you're saying is you're saying, hey man, I want you to follow this object. Very much like, the location constraint. So very much like the child parent constraint, right? So now when we move this, you can see it's moving all over the place. And if we, if I turn off my rotations, you can see the stroke follows it as well. So if we parent this back, so again, child to parent or child to the last active, Control P, keep transform constraints. Now when we move this, we notice that we don't have any of those crazy issues, and we can change that information, and we can keyframe that information. So that's actually kind of that's basically the essence of creating 2D characters, like the kind of pretty much like the shape to stroke setup rig pseudos. No, it's a rig setup for creating 2D animation cutout rigs using curves. So that is kind of, sorry, Pete. So that's kind of super cool. There's still a bunch of problems with the constraints, like the stretch 2 constraint is a pain in the ass. But basically, this is all parented to another curve, which is your root control, and then you have its like whether it's going to be rendered or not, right? It's viewport visibility. If we turn this off, then it should disappear. Maybe not. I don't know. I'll look into that. But before we go, last thing. Okay, Pete, good. So the thing is here on the limit constraints, let's just close this down. Okay, so on the limit constraints, this is a cool thing. This is the biggest thing that I was bumping into when I was animating. Basically, when you're moving these objects off, if I come here, NQ clear, basically, when you're animating these 2D, yeah, right, okay. Yeah, when you're moving these objects in space, basically, they can move back as far as you want. And the problem is when you're animating 2D cutout characters inside the 3D space, these can get spaced all the way out really, really far. And if you're animating to camera, which is probably the case because you're doing cutout animation, that means you're not going to tell how far the distance is. So you're going to get some crazy numbers in your z-axis. So when we set up a limit constraint, what we're essentially doing is we're saying, hey man, I don't want you to be so aggressive in the movement. What I want to do is I want to move this forward, and I want to be able to move it forward and backwards just a little bit. So it doesn't really matter what you're doing in here. It's still a very controlled movement, and you're locking in the space, right? Just like you lock artist into a calendar. So the thing is like that's like super handy. Like this just kind of makes it work really simply and super easy. Yep. The other thing is so basically you'll set up a default shape like this, and then you need to get that information across to the next shape. So really handy. Again, it's the last one that's active, and we're just going to go over here, objects, constraints, and you can add a sign, a hotkey or a quick favorites to it. Yeah, my man Brad. Yeah, shout out to him. And so basically, yeah, Q copy constraints, and we can see that those constraints have copied across. So now we can no longer move this, backwards and forwards and crazy depths into the z-axis. And so that's basically, that's the nuts and bolts for setting up, the simplest method I can see for setting up cartoon cutout character shapes for TV and feature film using using cutout animation. And the cool thing, the really super robo cool thing about this is if I just cut this off, so we can see, I'll just cut a bit more off. When we take a look at this purple one, for instance, we'll just push him forward. When we take a look at this purple one, if you're wanting to have a second stroke, all you have to do is duplicate it. And then basically, you've got one side of the arm here. Just rotate this guy. And because these aren't 3D shapes as well, and they're not filled in, it means, you don't have to worry about the picture plane going off crazy into 3D space. Yeah, so say for example, stop, yes, okay. So say for example, you have this shape here, and then you want your arm, just move this guy out of the way, come over here, and we'll just grab you, and shift duplicate. So when you have this kind of behavior happening on a rig for an arm, for example, yeah, basically, let's just move it down. So we change the picture plane. I'll just jump into front view. We can put it here. Cool, man. Cool bananas. So now we'll just turn that off. So now when we rotate this, right, we rotate this, but now what we can do is to create that idea of foreshortening and overlap and everything like that. We can rescale the position, of our stroke, which is kind of, it's super simple. And so that gives you that whole capability of being able to, do foreshorten the animation using a 2D cutout tool set. So basically, yeah, limit location, limit rotation are the, I don't know, the golden egg, the goose that laid the golden egg. And it totally removes the idea of the child of constraint. So this crazy bananas little guy that I've been putting together here to give away to everybody into the community, I'm going to have to go through, bugger off, I'm going to have to go through and and reset up all the constraints and the strokes again. But you can get like super, oh man, Jesus. You can get really, you can get super actually detailed, and there's lots of fun stuff to do this. So first one is always the hardest, right? You play with this stuff and you try to work out the simplest method, so this seems to be it kind of working so far. A few things that I need to get happening on this to make it better, but hopefully we'll tie this guy up soon, and then we'll be able to release. Yay. Okay. Well, that's it, guys. Thanks so much. All right. Next one here. Next one.